Well, welcome to the Healthy Christian Leader Show. It's so good to have you here today. I'm with my guest, Garth Williams, and we have a great conversation today to talk about the being and doing in the journey of leadership. And Garth is Associate Executive Minister and Director of Leadership Development for Canadian Baptists of Atlantic Canada. Garth, welcome to the program, and it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. It's really great to be here with you.
Garth, tell us a little bit, just briefly, about what you do every day.
Yeah, it's a really great question. Sometimes it's a little bit of everything. Primarily, I've got two responsibilities with our denomination. One is in the area of leadership development, so creating or offering or encouraging our pastors to be involved in ongoing leadership development practice, so they stay sharp, they stay focused, and that they're able to kind of give their best in terms of the calling that God has invited them into. The other part of the work that I do is the privilege to work with our Board of Ministerial Standards in Education. And that's the board within our denomination that walks with people through the steps toward ordination.
Well, let's jump into our conversation for today. So, for over a decade, you've been working with the Canadian Baptist Association to support pastoral health. What led you to that work in the very first place?
After spending 20 years in pastoral ministry, I came to that point in my journey where God was releasing me from the local church ministry that we were currently serving in, and just begin to open my eyes are up to opportunities around us. And at that time, our denomination was going through some changes in structure and in conversation and process leading to applying for one of our associate executive minister roles. I entered into the relationship with the denomination. I had served on both our council as well as on our Board of Ministerial Standards as a volunteer throughout the years. And so there was always for me a bit of an interest and a heartbeat in kind of how we go through life as pastors, understanding the pressures that come day to day, being able to understand how we dispense grace to ourselves and to others, but also seeking to live a life of integrity in the midst of the journey. So that's kind of where I think my own personal piece comes into it, and understanding, how we work through the tough stuff in our own personal life, and how if we don't, the effect that has around those close to us. In the midst of my early ministry years, I came across the writings of Brennan Manning, and specifically the Ragamuffin Gospel. And I think that really helped me kind of process through some of the discomfort that I was having in identity and ministry, and really getting to a point where I could see who I was through the eyes of God, and really to begin to live out that life of grace, to myself as well as to others.
Now, you talk about a balance of being with God and working with God or doing for God. Why is this balance significant, and what happens when we fall out of balance in this area of our lives?
Yeah, so I think this is important, and the language for me comes from Luke 10, the story of Mary and Martha, and Martha being frustrated with her sister, for not helping out in the preparations because she was sitting at the feet of Jesus and being with him, and Jesus says, Mary's chosen the good way or the better way. And so I think out of that, and my good friend Cheryl Ann Beals, who I know has been a friend of Aaron Ministries, she talks a lot about being with and the contrast of doing for. And so it's this sense of, being with Jesus versus doing for Jesus. And the two can't be separate. They need to be intertwined. And when that balance gets, messed up with and not leveled, it really creates a dissonance in the voices that we hear, I think, in our own heart and in our own mind. And it can lead us into areas to focus more on ourself than it is on the things of God. With the being with Jesus and sitting at the feet and learning from him, it's out of that knowledge and relationship that we're then called to do and to carry out the tasks that he lays before us, the ministry that he invites us to. If that's out of balance, then the tendency is to look for the relationship affirmation in other areas. And so if I'm not sitting at the feet of Jesus or being with Jesus and having my identity affirmed in him and having my direction given by him, it's really easy for me to get out of balance and begin to look for that affirmation in other areas, maybe in other people, maybe through the work that I do, maybe through whatever other context I may be in where I may be affirmed. And so when those things begin to kind of go out of balance like that, we begin to live a life that doesn't resonate deep with the gospel. And it begins to lead us into areas where we begin to make those decisions that aren't necessarily honoring to the mission that God's called us to.
So this imbalance in being and doing can actually impact our discipline and our ethical choices.
Absolutely, because if we find ourselves being doing for the affirmation, that's an addictive drug. I had a professor once, Haddon Robinson, who warned us against, the glorification of the worm. And in many Christian circles, after a Sunday morning event or service, the pastor will go to the door and they'll greet folks going out. And the common words that come are, "Well done, great message, really appreciate it. That was amazing." And there's a temptation in that to kind of really look for that type of affirmation. And so even in something like that, we can begin to shy away from the core of the gospel teaching to be able to hear affirmation and praise from people. And so we begin bit by bit to make decisions, or we can be tempted to make decisions that really begin to, lead us in an ethical dilemma. Where we begin to make, decisions that are really about feeding our ego as opposed to promoting the gospel or being solid in scripture. And so that's the temptation when we're out of balance and, our discipline we can let areas of our life go. And it's so important for us to be, self-leaders in this area.
Well, this is so good what you're sharing, because really the pastoral ministry, as wonderful a calling as it is actually, by its very nature, people gathering and listening on a Sunday morning, kind of set up to create some problems in there, of which this balance of, being and doing is absolutely mission critical to be able to counter that structure or create health, as you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's talk about workaholism.
Sure.
There's no pastor that deals with workaholism, is there?
Oh yeah, none at all, not at all, not at all. And I mean, our churches
What's it
love
look
workaholics.
like what does workaholism look like for pastors, and how does that develop?
Yeah, I appreciate having this question beforehand, because it really made me pause and think, like, when we talk about this, what are we saying? I think for me, at the core, workaholism is, for our pastors, a sense that they're indispensable, that they're the only ones who have the answers, that they're the only ones who can take the call at, 12 o'clock at midnight or at 1 in the morning to be able to go to the hospital and to care for people, that they're the only ones who, and if no one else does it, then they're going to do it, or it's not going to get done. And then that responsibility is going to be on them. So I think that's, when I think about it, that's one of the key points I'd look at. I think another one is that there's either no boundaries or poor boundaries about when the people that they're caring for can invade into their life and into their world. It looks like people who are always responding to texts, always responding to social media posts, never turned off from that world of ministry and mission. And at the end, it looks like they're sacrificing, their family, their self-care, just for the ministry. And it's a hard conversation to have, because all of those things will, as pastors, be called to do at some point in time in our journey. And it's important and good to be able to be with a grieving family, that's caught in tragedy. And it's good to do all of those things, but there needs to be finding that balance and that rhythm where we either, put boundaries to replenish after that, or that we just recognize that we can't always be the person on. So we either train people in our church to help with that, or if we're privileged to have extra staff, we kind of dispense the responsibilities amongst that. Just to be able to kind of not have that sense that we're the only ones who can do that.
It must be very liberating for the pastoral leaders that you work with when they start to get a vision of, how health can be nurtured, and that these responsibilities that we're covering, and talking about here are not laying all on their shoulders.
Yeah, I think for any of us, if we can find those glimpses of freedom to be able to kind of say, the good life that Jesus has invited us into is a life that's marked with freedom and hope and joy and grace. And if we're on a trajectory that is feeling like a weight and a responsibility, and that every moment of our waking life is kind of caught up in our responsibility to do, not a lot of that joy is experienced. So when we begin to kind of see, those doors open up, that there is a different way, that there is a call to balance, there's a relief that does come, and that there's an energy that is renewed, and that there's a hope that can be restored.
Well, Garth, we're going to take a break for just a moment, and folks, we'll be back in just a little bit to cover the second half of our discussion on being and doing and creating work-life balance that brings us as leaders into a place of health. And so we'll see you in the second half in just a little bit. Well, today's conversation was fantastic, but we're not finished yet. We'll be back in the next video with the same guest with more discussion about leader health. You know the drill. Subscribe and hit that bell. Would you join us for the next episode? You can find new episodes every week in video form on the Aaron Ministry YouTube page, and in audio form as the Healthy Christian Leader Show wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leaders. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more resources and information on how to donate or to start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.